Alright, our next episode is called Final Mission. It's episode number 83 of Star Trek The Next Generation, and it originally aired on November 19th, 1990. It was written by Casey Arnold Ince and Jerry Taylor, from a story by Casey Arnold Ince, and directed by Corey Allen. Alright, and as the episode begins, Picard and Wesley leave via mining shuttle for negotiations with a group of miners. And Captain Durgo pilots the craft. And as soon as the shuttle clears the bay, the Enterprise warps to assist with another crisis. Now, a garbage ship filled with radioactive waste has fallen into orbit around a peaceful planet, and radiation levels have increased dramatically on the planet. So the Enterprise must find a way to remove the barge and destroy it safely. Now, meanwhile, Durgo's shuttle loses its propulsion system, and Picard, Wesley, and Durgo crash land on a desert moon. Now, they figure out their situation, and they head for a mountain range in search of shelter and water. Now, back on the Enterprise, Riker begins towing the barge into the planet's sun, and he receives word that Picard's shuttle has disappeared, but must guide the barge through an asteroid belt before they can leave and figure out what has happened. Meanwhile, Picard, Wesley, and Durgo reach the mountains, and they find a series of caves, and in one of the caves they find a fountain of water, but when Durgo approaches it, a force field springs up and knocks him backward. And when Durgo tries blasting it with a phaser, an energy entity appears and flings the phaser from his hand, and the commotion loosens some boulders, and Picard manages to shove Wesley out of danger, but the falling rocks seriously injure poor Captain Picard. Now, after dragging Picard to another chamber, Durgo tries to blast the force field again, but this time the entity kills him. Now, Picard is starting to deteriorate, and Wesley tries to find a way to thwart the entity. Now, at the same time, the Enterprise finishes its task and warps back to find Picard and Wesley. Now, by modifying a tricorder using a part of his communicator, Wesley disables the entity and gets the water, and that sustains him and Picard until the Enterprise arrives and rescues them at the end of the episode. Now, this was really an important episode because it's the final time we see Wesley Crusher as a regular member of the crew. From this point on, Wil Wheaton, we do see him later on, but not on a regular basis as we did with the other seasons of The Next Generation. So, before I get to that, the idea originally had been for Wesley and Picard to crash together on a planet, and it had originally been an ice planet. But they felt like they could make it a more realistic dry planet than an ice planet, and they didn't want it to look hokey and fake, so they decided to make it more of a dry set. And there was a little bit more of a desire, especially by the crew, to be on location more than they did. And there was some location shooting for this, but the actual time where they were in the cave, they decided to do that in Stage 16, which they often do. And they just felt like they could do a better job with it that way. But the crew always enjoyed being on location because they got to have a little more fun. They didn't always have to be in their spacesuits, although in this occasion they were. But it just allowed them to have a lot more fun than they would just on the stage the whole time. Now, Wil Wheaton wanted to leave the show because he was feeling like, after having a lot done with his character early on, eventually he was just sitting in his on the bridge, just tapping buttons, and he wasn't having a lot of good stuff thrown at him, and he felt like he was hurting his career by not taking advantage of other opportunities, perhaps in film elsewhere. As you know, when he was young, he was in the film Stand By Me, so I'm sure he thought, well, I could have a lot more success doing other films as I'm getting older too as well. So he opted out, and they really wanted to do a better job in sending off another character because the feeling was that Tasha Yar had not left very well when she was killed off in Skin of Evil in that first season, so they wanted to make a better story. And I think this episode is pulled off very well. It's not necessarily the most original idea of in the world, where two people are struggling to stay alive and waiting for help, and obviously then the other side with the barge part of the episode, where it's a little more technical. But I think what really makes it shine through is the acting. I think it does really well. I think Nick Tate did well as Durgo, and then Patrick Stewart and Will Wheaton really, I think, chew up the scenery in their time together. And it received good writing. Jerry Taylor did a lot of work on this particular episode, and she said that she did more work on this than she did on many of the other episodes of the fourth season. So this really meant a lot to her, and I think she was pleased with the way it turned out. Corey Allen did a great job directing with this, and Michael Piller was satisfied with the way it turned out too. So there were some technical issues trying to figure out how to get the fountain with all the optical things. There were some problems and some dilemmas behind the scenes, but for the most part it turned out very well, and I really enjoy there's one line that Picard says near the end. He says, "Oh, I envy you, Wesley Crusher, you're just on the beginning of your journey." And at that point, Picard thinks he is about to die, because he's out of water and he's been wounded in the cave. So that's kind of a poignant moment, and it's interesting to see Wesley trying to do whatever he can to save Picard. And in this instance, Wesley doesn't seem like he has all the answers. He does save the day in the end, but originally in the first couple seasons it seemed like Wesley was almost this boy genius who knew more than the rest of the crew. And this time it's more of a struggle. You kind of see Wesley fighting to try to help Picard stay alive, and I think that makes it more of a dramatic situation, and just a more believable one at that too. So, thumbs up for me on this episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it too. And like I said, we will see Wesley Crusher again in future episodes, but he will now just be kind of a guest star. And at the end of this, he's headed off to the Academy, which I think was Gene Roddenberry's idea. That's how they were going to end it. They're not going to kill Wesley off. They're going to send him to the Academy, so if Will Wheaton ever did want to come back for any other episodes, he would be available for that. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you guys next time.